Hello, everyone. My name is Renee DeSelle, and I'm the Director of Education Abroad here at the University at Albany. And today we're going to talk about money management, both at home and abroad. So, the first thing to think about are the arrangements that you must make at home prior to departure for study abroad. So, firstly, financial aid. Keep in mind that you must apply for financial aid at your home campus. And in order to do so, you must have your estimate of costs for the program you're participating in and some sort of acceptance letter, either from the university that is managing your program, that's administering your program, or from the overseas institution itself. So, a proof that you've been accepted to the program could be in either of those forms, and you also need the estimate of cost to show to your home campus financial aid. Now, keep in mind, in order to be eligible for all of your aid, you have to be registered as a full-time student, which is a minimum of 12 credits for a semester-length program, or 6 credits for a summer program, or you should be registered for the number of credits that your acceptance materials indicate that your program actually carries. So, for example, if you're participating on a winter session program, you might be registered for 1 credit or 3 credits or 2 credits or a different number of credits as indicated by your program materials. Now, those of you that are not UAlbany students, it's your responsibility to make arrangements for your financial aid payments or any other payments to be sent to the University at Albany. And in order to start that process, please use the financial aid arrangements form that you'll find on your UAlbany online study abroad application. That helps us to indicate how much aid you're expecting to receive in the first place. And secondly, whether your home campus financial aid is going to send your aid, loans, etc. directly to UAlbany, or if your financial aid and loans will be dispersed to you, the student, and then you must pay UAlbany yourself. That's important to be aware of, whether you are responsible for paying it based on a refund that you may receive, or if your financial aid, loan, money, etc. will be sent directly to UAlbany on your behalf. Different financial aid offices do handle this slightly differently, so it's important to ask those questions and be aware of which category you fall into. Now, keep in mind, if you receive a financial aid refund, especially one that is unanticipated, please make sure all of your bills are paid before spending that refund. You should check with your home campus, assuming you're not a UAlbany student, and also the campus that's running your study abroad program to make sure that you don't have invoices left to be paid at either place. If at the end of the term, that end of your period abroad, if your invoices still have not been paid in full, a hold will be placed on your records, preventing the release of your official transcript from UAlbany. So, continuing about bills and payments here at home, things to be aware of prior to your departure. We here at UAlbany, we use an electronic billing system. So, only non-UAlbany students will get a paper bill. For you UAlbany students participating in this webinar, we use the ePay system. You will get your usual notices through the ePay system, much like you would if you were here on campus. Now, the University at Albany will bill UAlbany students with the ePay system and non-SUNY students for both SUNY tuition and all study abroad charges. Those of you from other SUNY schools, so for example from Binghamton or Potsdam or Buffalo, etc., you will get 2 sets of bills. One from your home SUNY campus for tuition and the university or college fee and any other mandatory fees that will apply, and another from UAlbany for all of your study abroad related charges. This is an example of an estimate of costs, and keep in mind this is a sample university in a sample overseas country, so the numbers are very general, but I used it as an example of the type of charges that you may find on your own estimate of costs. There is one other category of charge in the Paid to UAlbany section that you may see. Instead of an Education Abroad program charge, you may see an Education Abroad exchange charge, but it's basically indicating the same thing. So on this estimate of cost, what I want you to see is that there's two separate sections of charges. One in the paid to UAlbany section. Those are the charges that are going to be billed to you by UAlbany regardless of your home campus. So whether you're a UAlbany student or not, those charges in the paid to UAlbany section will be billed to you by UAlbany. The second section down where it says paid to the University at Albany or your home SUNY campus, those would be billed to you by the University at Albany if you're either a UAlbany or a non-SUNY student. If you're an other SUNY student, so again, a student at Binghamton or Oswego or Potsdam or Plattsburgh, etc., these charges would be billed to you by your home SUNY campus, which is where you're registered for study abroad, even though you're participating on a UAlbany study abroad program. This boxed line here, the total due to UAlbany and or your home SUNY campus, is essentially your total billable expenses. What's included or not included in billable expenses does vary by program, so please note at the bottom of the cost sheet where the notes appear what your program charges may include, what your differential may include, whether housing or meals, etc. are included or not included. For the purposes of this estimate, I included the housing and meals and group excursions, things like that, in that program charge amount. But depending on the type of program you're participating on, it may be in this bottom section called Other Projected Expenses. Other projected expenses reflects the amounts that we do not bill you for here at UAlbany. They're not billable expenses by our office, but they are other expenses that you need to be aware of that you may need to pay out of pocket as you go. And keep in mind that these are estimates, so your specific amount that you need to pay for example, a plane ticket might vary. These are our estimates. So how can you view your online bills? As I mentioned before, for UAlbany students, it's really no different than any other term that you would log into your ePay account through your MyUAlbany account, and you would manage your finances much like you would any semester that you would spend at UAlbany. For non-UAlbany students, once you submit the participating form, when you pay your deposit and you complete that commitment to participate process online, then you will be given a temporary PIN. Now this temporary PIN number is actually emailed to you to the email address you provided in your online study abroad application. And it's sent to you by our ITS department. So we cannot retrieve your PIN number for you. We'll go into more of that in just a moment. The other piece of information that you'll need in order to view your online bills is your UAlbany ID number. And that will appear in the questionnaire section of your program homepage on your UAlbany Online Study Abroad application. Your UAlbany ID number begins with 001 and then has other numbers after it. So you'll need your UAlbany ID number plus the temporary PIN. Then from the main webpage at albany.edu, you can click on My UAlbany, which is on the top right of the page, and click on Password Set Reset. On this page, you must enter your UAlbany ID, your date of birth, and your temporary PIN. Now keep in mind that one of the options is that you can enter your date of birth or your social security number. Don't enter your social security number. We have not collected your social security number in the first place, so it will generate an error message if you choose to try to log in with your social security number instead of your UAlbany ID, date of birth, and PIN. Now the first time you're setting up your account, so it's going to ask you to create your security question, and it will generate a complex password that will be your new way to log into your account from now on. A confirmation page will be generated with your NetID. So the next time that you log in, you would log in with your NetID, which is generated on this page this first time you go through it, and the complex password that you've now created. That will be your way of logging in to view your online bills and make payments in the future. You will also be assigned a UAlbany email address, which is essentially your NetID at albany.edu, and billing notices will be sent to that address. All students are responsible for checking their albany.edu email account regularly. So you can log in right from the albany.edu webpage, and you can click on the UAlbany mail icon on the top right. And I just want to briefly talk about the ePay system here at UAlbany. I'm sure most of you are familiar with some sort of an online bill pay management system at your home university, even if you're not a UAlbany student. The purpose of the ePay system is so that you can view and pay your UAlbany invoices online. It also allows students to set up authorized users. So you can authorize your parents or anyone else who would like to help you pay your bills to have their own login in order to view and make payments. You can also set up a payment plan on the ePay website. If you're going on a semester program, you can set up a 4-installment payment plan. If you're going on a summer program, they have a 2-installment payment plan. So the ePay system is very useful and allows you to be able to pay with a credit card online. All right, so moving on to money management overseas. Now keep in mind this section does contain general suggestions, and you should refer to your program materials for more specific advice on what might work best for your particular program. In general, the options that you have to access money overseas include things like the ATM cash withdrawal, which is by far the most convenient way of getting cash in most cases. Credit cards, debit cards, traveler's checks, overseas bank accounts. We'll go into each of those a little bit more detail in a second. You should really only be carrying a small amount of US dollars. Again, unless if your program materials indicate otherwise, carrying a lot of US dollars in cash with the intent to convert it into local currency is usually not the recommended method. It's not, you don't get the best exchange rate, and it has security issues if you're carrying around a lot of cash. It is, in most cases, a good idea to get a small amount of foreign currency prior to departure, mainly to have on hand for immediate incidentals like a taxi or paying a tip or buying some food upon arrival in your host country. And it also helps if you're not able to access a bank or an ATM machine right away upon your arrival. So as I mentioned, using ATM and credit cards overseas may be by far the most convenient way to get cash and make purchases overseas. You can revisit your program materials just to make sure that this is still the case for your program. And you can also visit visa.com or mastercard.com to start investigating whether or not there will be ATM machines nearby to the school where you'll be studying or the housing in which you'll be living. You should also check with your bank, and this is very important. You need to find out, first of all, will your card work overseas? Most will, but occasionally you might need a new card or a different PIN number or something in order to enable it to work abroad. You also want to do some research on what kinds of fees are going to be charged for withdrawals. So, for example, is there a fee for transactions completed in foreign currency? What sort of fee would apply for non-network ATM use? And finally, and perhaps most importantly, you must alert the security department of your credit card company and let them know that you'll be using your card overseas in order to avoid having it frozen or canceled. And this is the same process that you'd go through if you simply travel out of town here in the US for the weekend or for a short vacation or something else, that you need to alert the security department using the phone number on the back of each of the cards that you plan to be using. Otherwise, it will most certainly be flagged as fraudulent activity if you start using your credit or debit card abroad when your home base is normally in the state of New York or wherever your home base normally is. There are some companies, and the advice varies, but most recently it was Bank of America or Barclays, because it's partnered with Barclays in the UK, where there are no foreign transaction fees that apply for purchases made in foreign currency. So do some research. If you find out from your bank that fees will be charged for for transactions in foreign currency, then do a little bit more research. It might be worth switching banks in order to avoid such fees if you plan on using your credit card extensively while you're abroad. Traveler's checks. There are some advantages and disadvantages as you see here on the screen. The advantages include that they can be used everywhere, even in places where ATMs might not be available. They're also very safe, meaning they're actually replaceable if they're lost or stolen, as long as you have copies of the checks and the serial numbers. The disadvantages is that they sometimes involve high service fees. The exchange rate is not always as favorable as it might be for a credit card, etc. And they're not necessarily as convenient. In many cases, they have to be cashed at banks or specific money exchange kiosks. You can't necessarily use a traveler's check everywhere at every small establishment or store or restaurant, for example. So they might be best used as a backup plan to have some traveler's checks available just in case if you suddenly don't have access to your credit card or debit card or aren't able to access cash. Having a few traveler's checks is sometimes a good idea as a backup plan. It does depend a bit on the nature of your program. So again, refer to your program specific materials to know for sure. Overseas bank accounts may be an option for students that are staying one semester or longer overseas. In most cases, for shorter term programs, overseas bank accounts are really not as feasible, mainly because they take a while to open in some cases. For example, a personal check from the US normally is not accepted overseas. And if you try to open an account with a personal check from the US, it might take months to clear and involve quite a few fees. Some other options for opening an overseas bank account include wire transfers or international bank checks, or opening an account with a traveler's checks or money orders. So in order to avoid financial crisis, try to avoid carrying a lot of cash around. And if you must carry cash, consider using a money belt underneath your clothing. Don't keep your money in your back pocket, for example. And don't keep all your sources of money in the same place. Carry only what you need. Leave other valuables or cash or credit cards or things that you don't need immediately in a safe place at your housing. Photocopy the front and back of all the cards in your wallet in case of loss or theft so that you can more easily replace them if you needed to. And keep the copies of these cards someplace safe. So for example, with a family member at home, you can encrypt and email copies to yourself. You could even hide a copy of it somewhere in your luggage or somewhere safe. And finally, power of attorney. So I think power of attorney is an important thing to at least mention because the point of the power of attorney is to allow you to appoint someone else to act on your behalf on matters that you specify. So, for example, if you receive a financial aid refund check and it needs to be deposited into your bank, a parent or someone else should have power of attorney in order to sign that check on your behalf and deposit it in your account. There's also difficult to predict in advance what other matters might come up while you're gone. For example, if there was a parking ticket or something with a car or a housing, a lease, or anything ongoing, legally speaking, that needs to be dealt with while you're gone, having a parent or someone that you trust appointed as your power of attorney is a nice safety mechanism in order to deal with anything unforeseen that may come up while you're gone. The power of attorney form can be quite simple. You can find samples of the form online. You can also check with a lawyer or a bank if you need further advice. The important part of the power of attorney form is that it must be signed in the presence of a notary public. So you draw up the form appointing the person that you state to serve as your power of attorney, and then your signature as the student authorizing this other person to act on your behalf, your signature must be signed by a notary public. And this is the end of the financial and money management at home and abroad presentation. Please complete the assessment in your online study abroad application.